So I'm pretty excited to talk to Rob Maysey tonight, man. One of the things, I know we got a couple minutes before he joins us, close to 9:45. One of the things that I'm really, I think it's a crappy deal, but the Reebok deal, and that'll give us a chance to kind of catch up with him a little bit. I kind of want to pick his brain on how you become an antitrust attorney. It doesn't sound like a whole lot of fun, but I mean, he's got his hands full. I mean, the UFC's, no pun intended, they like to fight, and I think he's I hope he's up for the challenge, man.
Yeah, well, I really agree with it because, they're out to get some protection for the MMA fighters out there. The fighters, they're wanting, like, there's certain fighters, I'm sure we'll discuss it in the show, but, they want to stop getting jerked around, you know what I'm saying, by the promoters. They want to start bargaining together, they want to do right by the fighters. They need more fighters to step up and look at this. It's the Muhammad Ali Act, and I really think it's a good deal. I mean, these fighters, they deserve more than what they're getting. I mean, it's just, common sense will tell you, my gosh, man, these guys, they put their life on the line out there, and they go for blood, sweat, and tears, and they need to be deserved. I mean, they need recognition for it, and they need to be compensated for it,
Absolutely. And as well as anybody, we here at MMA Madhouse we're not Zuffa zombies per se. We support local MMA in every turn. So the last 2 weeks is the most I've ever talked about UFC ever in Madhouse. So before we get into that conversation, just wanted to pick your brain. Have you seen that Rousimov Paul Harris was stripped of the World Series of Fighting Championship because of another questionable, controversial lock in his last title defense?
Yes, I did. I watched that fight, and it was legit. I mean, I don't know. I've watched the last 3 of them fights that he's held them holds too long, and I think absolutely something needs to be done about it. And he just keeps doing it and doing it and doing it, and not only that, but the eye gouging. That was just plain sight that he was gouging his eyes. I mean,
3 times.
Come on, man. It was like one of the most dirtiest fights I've ever seen.
It wasn't even close. It was 3 blatant eye gouges, and Paul Harris he's an incredible fighter, and he doesn't need to do that, man.
Exactly. That's
is out of this world. If he would beat and dominate people regardless of cheating and being dirty, man, I just don't understand it.
Well, I don't either. I mean, if you look at the pictures of Shields' eyes, man, they were plainly scratched, poked, or whatever, and then, to hold them holds like that, them submissions that long, and the guy don't even need to. Like I say, the guy's a championship fighter, and I don't know. He says he gets caught up in the moment, but you can see Mazzagatti, I think, was the ref. It was just, he was actually hitting him, trying to get him to let go, and he just held on to him, and I think they done right, suspending him, and probably, taking the title back from him is probably a good thing. Maybe he'll think really twice next time he gets in there.
Yeah, and again, like we just talked about, his jiu-jitsu is world class, and there's no need for it. I get getting caught up, and I get the adrenaline, and I get this and that, but you're also a professional fighter. When you have a hold sunk in well enough that nobody's getting out of, or when you've broken your opponent, and there's no need to just turn it up one extra octave or hang on to it for an extra second. You could really hurt somebody.
not only that, I mean, you train every day for, 8, 10 weeks, 12 weeks. I mean, do you do that to your training partners? I mean, you know when to let go and when not to let go. I mean, if you train every day like you're supposed to, and and especially being a professional, you know when you got it locked in, and you know when the tap's going to come.
Right.
And,
absolutely. No, I agree 100%. I just get very frustrated, and I'm really glad. I'm very glad to see that the World Series of Fighting, in my eyes, did the right thing.
Yeah. I got to agree with it. I think something needs to be done. It ain't the first time he's done it, and he lost his title over it, and he could be, looking pretty right now, and he made a mistake, and it just keeps happening, and they need to do something, and I agree with it 100%.
Yep. So before we get Rob on the phone in a couple minutes, he'll be joining us. What do you think of the Reebok deal? I know you talked a little bit about it, not feeling like the fighters aren't getting their fair shake, but how do you feel of the deal as a whole, HR?
I feel like most of the people feel, the fans and the fighters. I don't really understand it. I mean, when you got the Nagare brothers out there fighting, and they're wearing, a sponsor like Reebok's gears, and they only come away with like $2,500 for doing that, that tells me that something is not right. It almost sounds crooked to me. Because them guys are legends, man. I mean, come on. And they only walk away with $2,500 from Reebok for sponsoring their gear. And God knows how many fight fans they have over in Brazil, and just I'd like to really know how many sales they made just from their name being on that show that night. Because
absolutely, and the thing that really pisses me off is that Ronda Rousey, and I get it, she's the face of the UFC and the face of women's sports basically in the world. She she gets a separate deal with Reebok, and then Jones had his deal. Jones had his deal before the deal came up, but then they cut him when all his legal troubles and things like that. So, it's just, I guess it's like, you scratch my back and I won't scratch yours. It's the way Dana and family seem to treat these fighters, and I'm really kind of excited to hear what Rob has to say in regards to it.
Yeah, I'm pretty stoked for this interview with Rob and get educated a little bit on what's going on, and see if we can't change a few things that actually needs to be changed about the, taking care of these fighters, man. I mean, and not only that, I think it would absolutely make for better fights than what's been going on. I mean, these fights lately have just been, I know a lot of people say watered down, but it's just really not very exciting to me. I mean, I don't even hardly watch it. I mean, I can miss a UFC fight and it don't bother me a bit. But if I miss like a Full Metal Dojo or a Spa Star promotion or a show fight, man, it bothers me.
Well, that's because you're an MMA fan. You're not a Zuffa zombie. So, but without further ado, we just got word that I'm very excited to, like you said, HR, to be educated and to talk right to, I guess, the horse and get it from the horse's mouth to see the antitrust lawsuit. And I'm sure there's things that we can't talk about, but ladies and gentlemen, Rob Maysey, the attorney who has filed this lawsuit, is joining us. Rob, how are you this evening?
Good. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Appreciate it, and I want to apologize to you. I have a very bad head cold, so if you can't hear me, just give me the proverbial slap in the face, and I'll try to speak up a little bit. So I apologize to you.
Oh, no problem.
So, Rob, I was just talking with my co-host HR, and we were kind of talking about the Reebok deal and just kind of the way we feel that the fighters are getting shafted, and then on the heels of that is the antitrust lawsuit that you and some of the other fighters, Kung Lee and some of the others, have brought to the forefront. Take me through your thought pattern. Take me through the conversations to get to where we're at today.
Yeah, the antitrust suit was years in the making. Carlos Newton actually flew into Phoenix, Arizona years back. Came into the office with me every day for a week. And for the first few days, I wasn't sure why he was there other than he said, hey, I've been working on some things. I think you can figure it out. By day 3, he told me why he was there. He told me what he wanted to do. And I had been thinking about antitrust before. I mean, it was in the back of my mind. I didn't know when guys would be ready to be plaintiffs in it. Carlos was kind of the instigator of that. He came into my office and he said, this is an antitrust violation. We have to file suit.
Sure.
That was years ago. The process of getting from that meeting to filing, again, took years. And that was in large part, I had to teach my firm and the other outside national antitrust firms about MMA. They didn't know about it. Wow. I had to prove up that what was going on in the sport constituted antitrust violations and that the case was big enough to justify the risk and expense of these national giant firms that put up the money and thousands of hours of attorney time on contingency. So that's kind of what led up to the antitrust suit. Carlos found me because he saw my articles on the Ali Act that were published online on various sites, and he ended up calling another well-known Hall of Fame fighter and said, hey, how do I get a hold of this guy? So that fighter gave him my number, and that's how we hooked up. He found me through the Ali Act, ironically enough. I'd published a number of articles on it.
And for some of the fans that are listening tonight, can you just kind of give us a brief? I know there's tons to it, but can you just kind of give us the nuts and bolts of the Ali Act?
Sure. Yeah, the Ali Act is a federal act that was passed to protect boxers from exploitation on behalf of promoters and managers. And the way it works is essentially it does 4 things. It has statutory provisions that prohibit coercive contract practices, and in large part those are contracts that bind fighters into what they call options in order to obtain a title fight. They require disclosures from the promoter to the athletic commission. In boxing, promoters are required to disclose all agreements to the commissions, and they're also required to file an affidavit under oath that there are no other agreements. There are no other payment streams going to the fighter outside of these contracts.
Was that in part and parcel because Ali had underhanded things going on when he was taking fights when he was a champion, or how does it get the name the Ali Act?
In large part, it got the name of the Ali Act just because of the clout Ali had and his fame and notoriety. They attached the act. They attached the act to his name because he was willing to stand behind it and support it. It was largely enacted due to abuses from the promoters. So the other main thing that the act does is it sets up conflicts of interest provisions, which means the promoter can't manage, the manager can't promote, and the promoter can't be the issuer of title and rank. And that, perhaps to me, is the most important thing it does, is that, as Carlos Newton says, and he's right if you think about this, in combat sports, promoters compete for fighters, and fighters compete for titles. In MMA, that's no longer true because the promoter dictates title and rank. The promoter can dictate title and rank. There is never bids. Guys aren't up for bid. They don't move around. You don't see outside parties coming in to bid on big fights. The act makes that illegal. The promoter can no longer act as the de facto sanctioning body. So in the legislative history of the act, and this is probably my favorite example, there's testimony that was part of the congressional history where somebody says, essentially, if Wimbledon, early on in its history, required any tennis player competing for its title to play for it and only it exclusively, we'd only have Wimbledon. That would be struck down as a restraint of trade. That's MMA.
And that's what you're trying to bring to light in this antitrust suit.
Yes, that's exactly right. So our antitrust suit is a monopolization claim. You know, a lot of fans and media think because there's other MMA promoters that de facto it cannot be a monopoly. The law, that's just not the case. So Microsoft was found to have monopoly power even though there's thousands of software developers. Sure. The test for a monopoly is twofold. One is percent of market share that firm has, and market share means revenue in any given industry. The case law test sets that at about 65%. Once a firm reaches 65%, they have monopoly power.
And what do you think off the cusp? Do you feel like UFC has? What percentage?
We believe it's 90 or above, 90% or above.
Wow.
In terms of market share, they get that percent of revenue in the industry. Now, that alone is not illegal. You have to couple that power with anti-competitive practices. And in our complaint, we allege numerous anti-competitive acts we believe they have taken, and they are able to take them because they have that dominant market position.
Like non-compete clauses and exclusive rights and things like that? Is that what you're talking about?
Acquiring and shuttering promotions, issuing threats to third parties, issuing threats to sponsors not to work with other promoters or fighters and other promoters, blocking venues. There's all sorts of things.
Wow, man. I'm sorry to cut you off, but it frustrates me to think that a sport that I love is not as pure as just two guys getting in the ring like gladiators and fighting to see who's a better man.
I use this example as well all the time. What other sport does merit in competition not dictate who ascends to title status?
Right.
Just MMA. Even in boxing, as corrupt as it is, there is a mechanism for fighters to work their way up the ranks, and that is beat guys ranked above you. In MMA, that doesn't always happen because the promoter not only matchmakes, they set ranks.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that makes – I didn't even think of that when you were talking about it earlier. I just thought, the rankings are out this week and, this fighter's here and that fighter's – I didn't even put together that they were making the ranks.
Yeah, I mean, think about this. So if I'm the promoter and I want to push somebody, I can favorably match them up, and I can put them in fights against perceived fighters far higher than them. That's how an 11 can go to a 1 or 2, which I believe Conor McGregor did. He went from number 11 to number 1.
Right.
How is that possible? What happens at 2 through 10?
Right. No, I agree 100%. Well, because 2 through 10 don't have the drawing power and the we'll call it the machismo that Conor McGregor had.
In the NFL, baseball, boxing, any other sport, the Baltimore Ravens offense, they were boring. They didn't get jumped over by 4 teams because they were more exciting.
That's true.
That cheapens the sport. And in fact, I argue that is not sport. Sport, result in competition dictates result.
So where are we at I'm asking questions just very basic just because I'm interested. So if you can't talk about anything, please don't, just it's okay.
Sure.
Where are we in the scheme of the lawsuit and monopolization?
Yeah, so in terms of the lawsuit, we had a hearing. Zuffa filed a motion to stay discovery, which means they were asking the court to put discovery on hold pending a resolution of the motion to dismiss. We opposed that motion. There was a hearing on that July 29th, and we ended up prevailing. The judge denied Zuffa's motion to stay. He asked the lawyers to get together, and it's called meet and confer, seeing if we could phase our discovery requests or in other ways tailor them so they're not quite as broad. We are in that process now. Discovery is going to proceed, though. We do not have to wait for resolution of the motion to dismiss, and the discovery process is underway. That's the status of the lawsuit. The motion to dismiss is not calendared yet. It may never be calendared. The judge may call a hearing, may not, may issue a ruling on the papers. We just don't know yet. So that's still outstanding. We're confident we're going to prevail on that motion, and I just can't tell you when that's going to be because we don't know.
Sure. Hey, Rob, this is H.R. Baker, and I got a couple questions. Will there be Attorney General for the boxing organization, Premier Boxing, investigate for the MMA side of it?
You know, that's interesting, and in fact, a couple of weeks ago, we were at the Association of Boxing Convention's annual convention. It was me and Vanderlei Silva, Nate Quarry, Brandon Vera, John Fitch, Ryan Jimmo, Stitch Duran, Juanito Ibarra showed up to the convention. And we gave a little presentation on the Ali Act. And as part of that presentation, I asked them, I said, former president of the ABC, Mr. Lukanoff, sent a letter to the Attorney General requesting an investigation into the actions of the PBC. And in that request, his complaint was the PBC is attempting to behave as an MMA promoter does. My question to the convention was, if those acts are illegal in boxing, why are they not too illegal in MMA? When everyone in here knows these same abuses are present in our sport. The reception after that convention was very good. Numerous commissioners came up to us after the meeting and said, we think what you're doing is great. We understand that this is going to be a congressional act, but we support it. We support your efforts.
Awesome. So to answer
your question directly, I'm not sure if the Attorney General is going to investigate or not. It's a good question. The request was made. Now, whether it happens or not, we don't know.
I see. Okay. So you got fighters like Vanderlei and John Fitch and Nate Quarry, Jim Onen guys. So are you expecting to have more and more fighters to step forward and join this and to just let them know that the more the better, or is that a big help as far as getting this passed?
In fact, there are many more that are already active participants in what the fighters are doing. They're just not yet public. And essentially we tell all the guys, we are not going to publicize you until you are comfortable. We're not outing you. You can out yourself.
So there's still...
fighters are going gym to gym right now. That process is underway. And, just because you guys have seen about 7 guys public, don't assume it's 7. It's not. It's many more than 7.
Okay. That was what I was kind of interested in. Was there a lot more than just what's been public? That's awesome. That's awesome. Good deal.
And for obvious reasons that they're not yet public, but they will be.
Let me ask just a real quick question, HR. I just want to piggyback off that. Do you think, Rob, that some of the recent releases, and I just think of Stitch and Jimmo, with those 2 names most recently that have been released from the UFC, do you think that is led to possibly part of their release?
Well, absolutely. I think so. Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of Stitch Duran, it seems pretty apparent he was released because he, at least in a roundabout way, criticized the signature sponsor of the UFC now, which is Reebok.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
Jimmo, as you guys know, has been very outspoken for many months. Now, whether his release was directly related to him being outspoken or not, you have to ask them. I doubt they're going to answer. But, one can think.
It kind of, I don't know, I just kind of laughed. I was thinking of A Few Good Men in that situation where at the very end of the movie they talk about, he wants to tell everybody that he ordered the code red or whatever. And I kind of was thinking about that. That Dana White is like, you're damn right. I fired him because of that. That's kind of what I was just thinking of.
Yeah, no. I mean, just to give you guys an indication, I'm largely muzzled in what I can say in public because of the lawsuit and because of other things. I'm getting threats. My firm has been threatened. My job has been threatened numerous times, and they're very blunt. Rob, your life at your firm is about to become very rough.
Let me ask you this real quick, and then HR, you can go right back. I'm sorry. What do you want to get out of it? I mean, this couldn't have come and sat on your desk and been like, this is where this. I mean, you're going to rewrite history basically. If this goes through and you get this, you guys win this lawsuit, you're going to rewrite history. This couldn't have been. Maybe it was. I don't know, but this couldn't have been the way you saw this playing out. Maybe I don't know. Take me through that.
I'm just a real estate lawyer, as I tell people. However, I very much understood how associations worked in sports. My brother was drafted out of high school. He worked his way up to minor leagues and eventually made the major leagues in 92 and 93. My brother was one of the players that was asked to cross when they went on strike back in 91, I believe it was. 91 or 92. My brother refused. So mind, at that time, our family was being evicted. That was our financial situation. My brother refused. Cam Bonifay, who was then the GM of the Pirates, went up to my brother and said, if you don't help me, your ass is going to rot in AAA. See ya. And he did. He rotted in AAA the entire year. I still ask buddies of my brothers, who was the best pitcher you guys ever saw? And I expected them to say, Maddox, Clemens, Randy Johnson, things like that. 4 of them said this guy named John Hope. I'm like, John Hope, who's that? Yeah, exactly, who's that? Google his numbers at one time. See what he was doing over a span of 4 years in the minor leagues. Numbers were eye-popping. John Hope refused to cross. That part I understood. I also understood the interplay between antitrust and associations.